If you know this, I want you to help me out. Okay? Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. Jack fell down and broke his crown, and Jill went tumbling after. Very good. See, we all know this by heart. Yes. Now, the problem is that sometimes when we know something so well, it loses its meaning. Imagine if I said, one day a brother and a sister were climbing up a very large hill where there was a fresh spring with cold, delicious water at the top. They went to bring back some for their family who were waiting at home for their return. However, before they could reach the cool spring, the brother who was holding the container slipped and fell, and the force with which he fell cracked the crown of his head on impact. And when his sister tried to grab him and save him, she also lost her footing and plummeted down the hill as well. You see how when you tell the story in a slightly different manner, it sort of comes alive in a new way? How many people here know the European origin of this nursery rhyme? Anybody? A couple people have heard it. So I looked this up, and apparently it dates back to the French Revolution, and it's about King Louis and Queen Marie Antoinette. Louis literally lost his crown when he was beheaded, and she came tumbling soon thereafter. That was the French Revolution. The point is that even though we all may know the words and the story by heart, so often, once we've heard something and said something so many times, it often begins to lose its meaning and its connection to where it comes from. Now, if we're not careful, our lives can become so routine and predictable that we can begin to go through the motions and miss the meaning of our own lives. The Easter story from the Bible is one of those stories that many of us have heard over and over and over again. We may have heard it so many times that we've not really been hearing it for a long time. So come with me and let's walk with Luke to the tomb. Now, if you think something's missing from this story, it's probably because each of the four Gospels gives a different account of who went to the tomb and who and what they found when they got there. Luke says it was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, and Mary, the mother of James, and maybe some other women, who first went to the tomb. When they arrived, they found that the stone that was covering the tomb, which is like a cave, had been rolled away. And it says, 2 men stood by them in dazzling apparel. The men said to them, "Why do you seek the living among the dead? Why do you seek the living among the dead?" Now, until this point, the 2 Marys and Joanna were routinely going about their lives doing what they'd always been taught and expected to do. It says they rested on the Sabbath, and then they gathered spices, and they gathered ointment, and they went to prepare the body. There's nothing new in this. They went back to the way they'd always done things because this was the Jewish custom for the dead. However, suddenly they had this experience which broke them out of their old way of thinking and acting, and it gave them a new perspective. Suddenly, everything that they had come to believe about death and about life was turned upside down. And they realized that nothing would ever be the same again. They realized that they were not supposed to be there following the routines of death. They were being called to new life. Now, I've never told this congregation how this happened to me. It was after my oldest daughter died 4 years ago. You may recall that she was 3 years old and she died suddenly and unexpectedly due to a very, very rare virus that obstructed her heart. Now, in my grief, I found a book that was to help people deal with sudden death, which comes with its own challenges. One of the exercises in it recommended that if there's something that you wanted to tell the person who is now gone, but you had no chance to tell them, then write a letter to the person who's died. And I thought that I would try it because I was feeling very bad about the fact that I had lost my temper with my daughter about an hour before she died. Of course, never imagining in my wildest dreams that what was going on inside of her. It was the middle of the night, and I'd been rocking her for a long time because she was complaining of a stomach ache and she couldn't sleep. At one point, she asked for a cup of water, so I went and I brought her one. She took the cup into her tiny little hands and took a sip, and when she was done, she just dropped it all over her crib. Now, it was late, and I was exhausted. And now I had to change all the sheets. Needless to say, I let her know that I was not happy with her performance. And then, before the hands of the clock could make another pass, she was gone. Forever. So when I wrote her the letter, I told her how much I love her and how she had opened places in my heart to love and emotions that I never knew or experienced before. And in it, I apologized for losing my temper. And I explained that if I had realized what was happening, I would have never raised my voice at her. Now, it was a very emotionally draining experience writing that letter, so I put the book aside. And when I picked it back up a few days later, the next assignment was to write a reply as if from the person who had died. The idea was to start writing and keep the pen moving so as not to overanalyze. Well, I started writing, and the most beautiful and healing reply poured onto the paper. It was as if I found her voice. I knew what she would say. And those words helped heal my heart. They were like the balm in Gilead. But more importantly, from that moment, I knew that she was still with me and would always be. So close that at times it's as if I can feel her sweet breath on my neck. And in that realization, I began to come alive in a new way. I realized in that moment that I was not just becoming adjusted to her death, I was being called into new life. And that's the lesson of Easter. It's not so much about what happened to Jesus after his death as it is about what happened to the people around him. They were called into new life, and therefore, so can we all. They went from being convinced that Jesus was gone forever into realizing that he was with them still. And with that, they understood that they were called into a new way of being and new responsibilities. We each go through our own experiences of Good Friday when it seems that all is lost and all that we had hoped for and planned on and dreamed about is gone. And naturally, we long with all of our hearts to have it back. Nothing, not even Easter, can change that. It will never be the same.